I'm a linguist by training. I have a PhD in linguistics. I taught at Harvard for a few years and was at Amazon, Alexa, Google. So I come at this from a linguist point of view, not necessarily like a sort of tech computer sort of point. But what we're doing at Rime is bringing these two together. And I want to talk about what we actually do as humans when we're talking. Because we do this all the time. In fact, I don't normally stand up, here in front of people and talk. You can tell, unpolished. But then we're talking day in, day out, all of us here. And there's a couple things that we do as humans when we're talking that are pretty unique, and I would say different. These are just three of them. There's tons more. But the first one is that, obviously most humans are not actors. Most of you here probably have zero acting background. You couldn't act if you wanted to. However, if you, were to look at each technology landscape, you wouldn't know because you're basically only hearing actors when you're hearing voice AI or speech technology whatsoever. And there's reasons for this. There's real sort of technological, historical reasons for this. I don't know. I sort of doubt anyone recognizes this guy. This is Enrico Caruso. This guy was like the biggest opera singer in the sort of turn of the century, more or less. And this is his self-portrait of himself recording his voice, one of their first early voice recordings. And he was a real tentpole voice, like a singular voice around the world. Not because he was, necessarily the best singer in the world. He was really good, but he was just the voice because technological limitations sort of prevented there from being multiple voices that were heard around the world. The limitations were he had to speak into, this can to imprint upon a wax cylinder and so on and so forth. You couldn't do that at scale. And this persisted for a long time. So even sort of more modern artificial voices are well known. The Stephen Hawking voice is like a tentpole. Again, that was due to technological limitations. So too with this woman who you've surely heard before but have no idea who she is Susan Bennett. She was the voice of Siri, for instance. And she's just the voice of Siri. Why? Because technological limitations. But those technological limitations are no longer really the case. And we have a lot more really cool stuff coming down the pipe in terms of what we can do. And we're no longer restricted to these, again, tentpole style voices that everybody knows, ever thinks of. We think of them due to those technological limitations, which are, again, increasingly obsolete. And so at Rime, we're taking advantage of this. We have a studio that we built just a few blocks away from here, where we bring in regular people off the street. You guys can come and, record your voice, get your soul stolen if you want as well, because we can sort of replicate every sort of individual regular person style voice nowadays, of the sort that you were listening to when I was just playing that little clip before. We no longer have to have a sort of, again, maybe very polished but stilted voice actory style voices. Instead, at the future that we're building at Rime is more akin to what we actually do all over the place every day in our everyday life. And so we've been recording, again, for the last couple of years, just thousands upon thousands of regular people. We've kind of bounced around the country, recording different accents and so on and so forth for all different demographics. Why? Because we were trying to create something that mimics to some degree and ever closer how actually people talk. And you can see that sort of in the nature of our voices that we offer. Another thing that is unique to how humans actually talk is that, sure, maybe some people come up to podia like this and have prepared speeches and so on and so forth. I clearly don't. I'm just ad-libbing. I'm improving. And it doesn't take any particular sort of skill to improv. We improv every day with every conversation that we have, at least if we're trying to be normal people. But in virtue of that sort of inherent improvisational character that everybody employs when they're actually talking, you sort of make what some people could describe as flubs or mistakes. People say or they sort of start a word but they'll finish it a few times. They go like but wait, that sort of thing. And we often think of these as flubs because these are sort of in contrast to scripted, polished, maybe actorly speech. But these are actually really important, or just a linguistic perspective. These aren't actually errors. We oftentimes use an or an right before a word that we think the person that we're talking to is maybe unfamiliar with, say. These actually have sort of rhetorical uses that are important not only in terms of expressing ourselves, expressing our thoughts, but also in terms of, for business reasons as well. There's real research out there that shows that these are not, again, empty fillers, but actually really important for real use cases. And for that very reason, we record people doing naturalistic stuff, and we actually encode that in our models, or at least the capacity to have hyper-naturalistic versus a little more clean style speech. And you can hear this sort of in little example clips that I've cherry-picked just because they sound particularly cool that I'm going to play for you. These are examples of people doing really small things but have a lot of semantic meaning, a lot of meaning that they're conveying. So here, this first one I'm going to play is an example. This is all text-to-speech. This is all artificially created. But at the beginning, she'll do something like, I just do a little thing that sort of conveys, gets your attention, and is very subtle, but really conveys a lot of meaning. So let's play this for you guys.
So, when I first came to the United States, I didn't speak a word of English.
So that little she does there, like conveys really important meaning. It's generally sort of gotten rid of in a lot of other voice technologies. So too with false starts or stuttering of sorts.
You know that thing where like someone's just talking, but like then like it will stutter. Yeah, luckily I don't have that problem.
Similar with, again, little breath work that we do that in a lot of voice recordings that are going to the training of these models are excised. But we keep them in, or at least keep them toggleable on and off. So something like this.
Gosh, that's a tough one. Let's see here.
Or similarly, this is just a fun one. This doesn't really have many pillars, but I like to put it in here.
Bro, you gotta watch your step, because if you don't, bad stuff can happen, I swear, like, boom, you on your butt.
And so this is how actual people actually talk. And this is what we, as a linguist, I focus on. The head of data here, right? We deliberately capture this sort of stuff so as to make real conversations at scale sound like real humans. And one final thing I want to talk about is, this is a really wild thing that you might not know about actual humans. I mostly study actual human speech, not necessarily technological sort of robot speech like this. But one thing that's really cool, little kids, they go through a stage when they're learning words just extremely fast. And there's a stage where they can learn a word on like one exposure to that word. There's a lot of data showing this. And this is how humans actually do it. Now, in a lot of current technological voice AI models, to learn a new word, you basically have to retrain anew each time. Really expensive, really slow. But at Rime, we were taking this sort of analogy to how humans learn to heart, and we have a means of sort of taking customer input for a given word. Maybe it's a really wacky word. We do a lot of fast food ordering, and they're always coming with just insane words for their new menu items, and they're constantly coming out. And so what we do is we have a means of having our speech models learn the words with one exposure and do it correctly, not a roll of dice every single time. And so I'll show a little tiny example of this if I can. We have a dashboard that our customers use. You can kind of drag and drop stuff on here, but I like to just type it in. So imagine there's this word that you want to have covered. You can go in and enter it in and see if we have coverage of it. Oh, I put the wrong word in. I was going to do blarch or blark. Need up word. Check the coverage of it. Lo and behold, that's not in our dictionary. You can listen to how we sort of naively or natively pronounce it. The word is blarch. And maybe that's right. But maybe actually your word, your blanche, it's actually blark. You still have left the CH, but it's pronounced blark. So you can sort of select that word, request new pronunciation, and then I'll go to some of our linguists behind the scenes, and we'll see that, oh, somebody requested this word and they wanted it pronounced in a particular way. We can click on it, say add pronunciation, and I'm gonna use my little secret way of pronouncing this stuff. We're gonna call it blark. Let's save it. And now it should pronounce it the way you want it to.
The word is bark.
We upload that and then it learns it as if Anna had learned it like a kid. Natively, one exposure, getting it right every time. And this has real effects. So we generally do large scale enterprise stuff. We do, small startups to large scale enterprises, but doing human speech the way humans actually do it from a human sort of oriented perspective has real effects. So a large telco that you guys have surely interacted with before, we've increased their call containment by 25%. National fast food brand that you've surely eaten at before, we've increased their sort of online orders, calling orders by 20%. Why? Because our voices aren't stilted actorly. They sound like your friend down the street doing the flubs, doing the naturalistic things, and able to sort of keep up with their absurd sort of product and menu items as they come out. So that's a little intro to Rime. The voice AI future is going to leave behind this tentpole actor or sort of performer style towards something that's more reflective of, everybody around here, flaws and all, how we actually use language. That's the future, and that's what we're building at Rime. And thank you.
Open for questions.
Daddy, pass around the man. Last female voice. Did I actually hear vocal fry come out?
Yeah, so we intentionally, a lot of people don't like that vocal fry, but there's subtle reasons for keeping that in it. Some people don't like it, but that's what people actually do, and that's going to be the future. So vocal fry, or the sort of what I like to call up talk, and somebody sort of says a non-question as if it were a question. We have that. So you can kind of toggle that on and off depending on whether you'd like to use that or not. Yeah.
Two questions. One is, so you take a TTS and then during that process, you insert those feeders like or stuttering. And my second question is, do you have the capability to kind of, let's say, pick up my accent and then reply back with my accent?
I understood the first question. I'm going to repeat that. Then I'm going to ask you to repeat the second one. But the first part is, how do we get sort of toggle on and off these ums and uhs? And this is relatively simple, like sort of text manipulation stuff. You can sort of stochastically introduce these things into the text as it comes in. Or you can sort of be a little more clever and insert them after sort of, say, low frequency, or in front of low frequency words, which they actually show up more often in natural speech. Yeah.
Well, the second question was that does your model have the capability to mimic somebody's accent? Let's say somebody calls and they have a southern accent. Yeah.
In principle, but that's more of what our customers do. So our customers often integrate their CRMs or whatever information they have about their incoming caller and serve the relevant thing. So we're doing that, our customers are doing that relatively coarse grain scale right now. Usually it's by like zip code. And so, for example, if we're in a fast food chicken restaurant in Atlanta, then based on whatever the zip code is, they'll serve certain types of voices that sort of more generally appeal to that person. But there's a really open question here that I think is really interesting. You might assume that you're calling in, that you'll respond best to something that sounds more like your demographic. Like maybe 55-year-old Texan men want to hear 55-year-old Texan men. But we've been working with some companies that do massive A/B testing on our different voices. And it turns out oftentimes 55-year-old Texan men want to hear Gen Z Latinas, Like it's not an obvious question, And so it's in the data somewhere, and that's what we're sort of building towards. Yeah.
So do you have the capability to, one of these, you have the capability to, I guess some companies call it voice changer, where I could read what I want read with my speech pattern, as stilted as it may be or as stumbly, and then assign one of your voice models.
Well, we've been playing around with that, and the capacity is out there. We're definitely playing around with this. We haven't, we're, a startup. We're kind of trying to chase the dollar, chase the customers, and I think that's a really exciting sort of thing that we're able to do, but nobody's really asked for it. So it's kind of arrow at pocket to some degree. The ability to, take any given person's voice and make it sound, you do the cadence or whatever, but the different style, yeah. Just last question. I mean, I'm focusing on side. I shouldn't neglect the other side, but
Okay, after this?
sure.
Okay, thank you for sharing wonderful demo. My quick question about, I curious about where you get a different voice for your training. Where?
Yeah, so again, we have our studio just a few blocks away from here in San Francisco, and luckily in San Francisco, there's tons of different types of people. You know, it's trivial to get Spanish and English, which is not that hard to get whatever accent or language you might want. So we just bring them in. Now, of course, sometimes people want a particular, our customer might want a really particular language, and we'll go source it from, you know, the internet, basically. Yeah. But I've also made trips down through like Georgia and Alabama, collecting Southern voices, which are a little trickier to get around the Bay Area. But yeah, so we just get regular people off the street. They're cheaper and they're more natural than actors.
Yeah, true. So you guys collected the samples from general people, like, random people, and then doing your model, and that's how one of these kind of natural sounds are coming, like alike, and all of this. Is that?
Yeah, well, it's not just that. We need to sort of, I don't want to give too much secret sauce away, but there is a sort of, we're a text speech company, and so it has to sort of co-vary with the text to some degree. And so we have a sort of in-house recipe for how we manipulate that text so as to make those cool things arise. Yeah. Yeah, so the question is how we do evals. And there's a lot of noise about voice evals out there. And there's some obvious sort of numbers you can point to in terms of latency, in terms of word error rate, that sort of stuff. That really only gets you so far. And this is one of the, honestly, I don't have a good answer because so much of this stuff is your gut, and it's hard to do gut testing at scale and know what you're talking about. But I think that's really uncharted waters. I mean, we have things we could put numbers readily to that aren't necessarily super informative, and things that are super important that we don't know how to measure. That's kind of the name of the game right now, I would say. Yeah.
So one of the challenges when TTS that I have played around, I noticed that getting the emotion into the voice is hard. Yeah. And when I say empathy sounding voice to Gemini, right? Like making it work for different accents. It's just English accent itself was harder. And the definition of empathy based on the use case, again, there's no one single way to express empathy because there's the words part of it and there's the intonation part of it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's, again, a really hard problem. We kind of do a little cheap way of doing it because we're not doing, like there's other people in the voice space that do sort of more, I would say, fiction or like content creation where you just need this vast range. We do massive scale conversations with corporations, which are relatively formulaic. So we kind of get to take the easy way out. We don't need to be able to say, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that with a really excited voice. We have our, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, sounds sympathetic. But we can't really do it any other way. So we just kind of take advantage of that formula is, yeah.
So does Rime have data on which voices will land best with not like certain demographics or industries, for example, like professional services? Or so on that customers can access instead of, obviously they're only.
Yeah. So we do this internally. We have a whole team of people and just give them a battery of different voices and have them rate them on, is this appropriate for whatever finance or what have you. I think there's still a lot of room to be way more fine-grained and nuanced with that, but we do what we can to take that burden off our customers to the degree possible. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been working on low-resource voice model for the last year and a half. So you've shared some stats about 25% of like retained calls, and I was curious if you guys have done studies in terms of like without this like naturalness, the calls tend to drop off versus like what you guys are bringing as value. Is that like what affected those percentages going up?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to interpret those things. I sort of half suspect that the voices sound like novel and unique enough that people like linger just for a little bit longer And, maybe they still eventually want to go to the operator, but if that saves, 15 seconds across thousands and millions of calls, that adds up pretty fast. But there's different explanations for why that might be the case for these particular things. I think it's because they sound more natural. For the lower resource languages, that's a really interesting problem. We have some people on our team that we're doing this at Stanford, doing ASR, just speech recognition for lower resource languages. And we try to recruit sort of typologically related languages to like boost that stuff up. So see, if there's a language in India that's related to Hindi but has really low resources, we kind of recruit our Hindi models to bootstrap them to some degree.